it's your boy TapMana, and today we have another ASMR deck build. Happy holidays, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today we have red and black as our main colors, Rakdos theme, and this deck was inspired by Renn'n'Stimpi, so I call it Cat and Mouse House of Pain. I don't believe Ren actually is a mouse, though, so anyways, let's get right into it. Now, the first thing you'll notice is these cards are already sleeved. Unfortunately, due to a technical difficulty, the first recording of this, which was about an hour long, just under an hour long, became an unsupported file while I was transferring. So hopefully this will work out for the best or better. Out of the suggestion of a Patreon member, I went ahead and I'm experimenting with a different style of how we review the cards. So instead of reviewing them by color and type order, I'm going to go review them by purpose, their synchronicity into the deck itself. Again, this deck was inspired by Renn'n'Stimpi. So for our commanders, we have Toggo, Goblin Weaponsmith. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a colorless equipment artifact token named Rockwith. Equipped creature has tap 1, tap, sacrifice rock, and then this creature will deal 2 damage to any target. And it has partner, and its partner is Falthis, Shadowcat familiar. Commanders you control have Menace and Death Touch. Now, Toggo's just a regular 2/2. Falthis is just a regular 2/2, but with them both on the battlefield, you'll have Menace and Death Touch, which means the rocks that you use to shoot, those rocks are being dealt damage by the creature itself, so they'll count as Death Touch weapons. That's the first combo we have going there. Is essentially we want to get Falthis out first just to have the ability for our commanders to have Menace and Death Touch. Or alternatively, I mean, it really doesn't matter which one you get out first. They're both the same casting cost, essentially just different color schemes. And Toggo, actually, I think we would want to get out first because it's whenever a land enters the battlefield, not in landfall, but whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, which will be very useful later. So we'll go ahead and set those up, and we'll go over the deck itself. Now, this deck is black and red, and I made it the least friendly as possible. There are definitely room for upgrades. I'll try to point them out along the way. One thing that I recommend, one upgrade, is if you have it within your own collection or you don't mind getting it, you want to get Fiery Emancipation. It's an enchantment that whenever a source you control deals damage, it triples that damage instead. So, but anyways, this deck I would say is powerful enough in its own. The most important part of this deck is the mana ramp. You want to focus first on mana ramp before really dishing any damage out. So we have cards like Desperate Ritual, which allow you to, turn 2 to 3. Essentially, you turn 2 mana into 3 red, and then Burnt Offering. You're going to sacrifice a creature to add that creature's casting cost in any combination of red or black to your mana pool. My foes serve me twice, in dying and in death. Couldn't say it better, Lindell. Whoops, making notes here. Couldn't say it better, Lindell. Couldn't say it better. I hope everyone's having a great holiday season so far. I hope you're around people. And for those of you who may not have anyone around, I'm wishing you the best. I'm hoping that you have a great holiday season. So the next mana ramp card we have here is Mind Stone. It's a 2-drop artifact that you can tap for a colorless resource, so colorless mana source, and then you can tap 1 and tap it. You can tap and sacrifice Mind Stone to draw a card. You guys guessed it, Ornithopter of Paradise. That's a 0/2 flying, add 1 of any color. It's just, for 2-drop, it's a great artifact creature in my opinion. You get a little bit of the mana ramp that we need. You get a flyer that you can use as a blocker. Then we have a Rakto Signet. This one, it's a 2-drop artifact. You can tap 1 and tap it, and then it'll tap and add 1 of each red and black. So It's pretty gnarly in my opinion. A good 2-drop artifact in my opinion. Made of bone and boiled in blood, a Rakto Signet is not considered finished until it has been used as a murder weapon. Pretty dark stuff in my opinion. Moving on, we have a cursed mirror now. The synchronicities you'll find in this deck I'll be pointing out along the way, but essentially we want to deal as much damage as we can to each opponent, which is ideal in any battlefield, but for these two colors specifically, dealing damage in every and extra possible way is going to be pretty crucial, and we need to keep the board clean to do that. So there are ways, as you saw earlier, where you can sacrifice a creature you control. So, but anyways, moving back to the mana ramp, Cursed Mirror is a card that 2-drop plus 1 red. You can tap it for a red, and when it enters the battlefield, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until the end of the turn, except it has haste. Now, you're going to find that there are a few creatures out here on our end that are going to be very useful for Cursed Mirror specifically. So the fact that you can choose any creature on the battlefield is just a plus, but this was included in the mana ramp as it had an extra ability which I liked. We have a Charcoal Diamond, the essence of night to harden the soul. When it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped, and you can tap it for a swamp. Then we have Fire Diamond. Enters the battlefield tapped, and you can tap it for a red. It's a 2-drop, just like the Charcoal Diamond. The essence of flame to stoke the spirit. Bloodstone Cameo is for 3. It's an artifact. You can tap it for a red or a black. No tapped. It's just comes into play, which I thought was really cool. I don't have many of these types of cards around, so I included this out of love. Tormod's Script. This is going to be one of the few cards that doesn't really work. It's not that it doesn't work in this deck, it's just a form of protection. So this card easily can be swapped out for something else of your choice, but for 0-drop and protecting yourself from someone's graveyard play, I thought it was worth it. Alright, so that's mainly our mana ramp there. Now in this deck, we're gonna go over the utility and the damage. So there's gonna be a lot of damage and destruction here. We're gonna look at the utility first, just so that we can see why we want to go about this in certain ways. So let's see here. There we go. I'm just making sure we have everything in the right piles now. Okay. As you saw, we already had a resource that allows you to sacrifice creatures, and we're definitely going to find more here. So, all right. Starting off, oh wow, this is the big one. Vorpal Sword. This one allows your creature to get a +2/+0 and has Death Touch. It's a 1-drop black artifact equipment, and it equips for 2 black. The real kicker about this one is that if you have the mana available, you can tap 5 colorless and 3 black, and until the end of the turn, Vorpal Sword gains whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So this is something you want to ideally attach to one of your commanders, since they'll have Death Touch and Menace, forcing the player, if they have those creatures available, to block, so that you can just get them back from the command zone. If your creatures end up dying, their creatures will definitely die. That's one part of the utility here. We're trying to keep the board as clear as possible with our utility if it's not enhancing us. So Swiftfoot Boots, I just feel like this is a commander essential in any commander deck. If you want your commanders to go ahead and act hastily, always in haste, never in hurry, right? So attaching this to either Falthis or Toggo is just an excellent move either way, so you can protect one of your commanders there. Putting that up there. It's a 2-drop equipment. Then we have Sot's Will. Now this is an instant. If you control a commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both. Each opponent sacrifices a creature they control with the greatest power. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyard, then create X01 black throw creature tokens, where X is the greatest power among creature cards exiled this way. Now as part of our utility, it's great if we want both, but if you're in a tight bind, we want the first one. We're trying to keep the board clear. We're trying to keep our opponents from dealing us more damage than we can deal, which I doubt, unless they have some crazy, unless we're playing, against a completely different power level. But as far as casual Magic goes, this deck is meant to be definitely more mean than the decks I've created more previously. Now, something that you can drop on turn 2 essentially, or turn 1 if you have let's say a Dark Ritual, which is a great upgrade. You can essentially play a suspend card, which is Profane Tutor. I still can't believe that this card isn't skyrocketing in value ever since its release. You essentially suspend it for 2 for 1 colorless and 1 black, and you search your library for a card. Then you put that card into your hand, then shuffle. Just love this tutor. As an additional, then we have Village Rites. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature. Then you draw 2 cards. This card is going to specifically tie in to the next section of cards that we're going to look into. Cards like this, cards where we sacrifice a creature. Remember that. In this deck, when you're sacrificing a creature, there's a combo that goes with it. We can Sign in Blood. I really only recommend using this for yourself. It's for 2 black. So sorcery, and target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. There are other draw card engines in here, but this is one that you can use in a pinch, or you can use it against an opponent who just needs that last bit of 2 life hit to them. Another form of utility is land destruction, which is very few in decks in general, but there is a couple hitters in here that can mess with your opponent's lands. Obsidian Charmaw is intended as more of a blocker, and the spell itself is 2 red and 3 colorless. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each land your opponents control that can produce a colorless. So, Myriad Landscape, one of the panoramas, other lands that can just a wastes is a card I'm thinking of. It'll just make it cheaper to cast in general, and it's a 4/4 flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you can destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. So one of their dual lands, their Gaia's Cradle, whatever they're playing with, you can just smash that with this while getting a little bit more defense. We want as much utility out of the creatures. Moving on, Grave Shifter. With those enter the battlefield, you're going to find that some of the creatures on our side that end up getting lost in the mix could be useful because they have enter the battlefield tactics. So Grave Shifter was just a 4-drop changeling, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. We'll find similar cards like this, but this is allowing it to go to your hand so you can control the drop. Alright. I hope everyone's enjoying the video so far. I know it's very different, but I want to give it a try. Thank you to the Patreon follower who gave his suggestion of kind of breaking down the combos a little bit more and maybe dividing the sections. So we've gone over our commander combo and the mana ramp. So we want to be able to gain some life out of all this, right? Because we're going to be doing a lot of damage. It's going to make us the target. We're going to get attacked more. So we have cards in here that will definitely assist. I think some of the utility cards were lost in here, but let's see here. Okay, so more utility along with the essence of gain life is Mask of Gristlebrand. So it's for 2 black and 1 colorless. It's a legendary artifact equipment. It gives your creature flying and lifelink, and when the equipped creature dies, you may pay X life where X is its power. If you do, draw X cards. The legacy of evil lives on. Super dark. Taborax, Hope's Demise. Now, Taborax is a 2/2 flying. It has lifelink as long as it has 5 or more +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put +1/+1 counter on Taborax. So, again, the text is important here. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Taborax. If that creature was a cleric, you may draw a card. If you do, you lose 1 life. So we're remembering that there's things here that tie in to deaths of the creatures that we control. We have a vampire. We have a Nighthawk Scavenger. It's Vampire Rogue. It's for 2 black and then 1 colorless. Flying, Death Touch, lifelink. its power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types amongst graveyards in my opponent's graveyards. So, amongst cards in my opponent's graveyards. Then we have the Vampire Nighthawk, which is a 2/3 flying Death Touch lifelink for 2 black and 1 colorless. Classic card. I believe this is the 2013 Commander version that we're holding here. That's going to go to your deck. I don't know. You can correct me. More lifelink, more menace. 2/1 lifelink, no Priest of Oblivion for 1 black and 1 colorless. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, there's just that kicker there, where we can return target creatures from our graveyard to the battlefield, because obviously there's more enter the battlefield things that will happen here. This is probably one of the most simple cards in here, and I put it in here for flavor and because I love this card from back in the day. Child of Night, 2/1 lifelink. We'll definitely want to take advantage of any lifelink we can get our hands on. So then we have Ornithopter, which is just a 0/2 flying that I have a thing for Thopters, so whenever those flying ones are available, as you saw with the Ornithopter of Paradise, I try to throw those in the deck. Alright, we have Essence Pulse. It's 3 colorless, 1 black, and it's a sorcery. You gain 2 life. Each creature gets a -X until the end of the turn, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. So considering you have other sources of lifelink and ways to gain life, this will be a great card to use. And then Tendrils of Agony. It's another sorcery, 2 black, 2 colorless, Strixhaven foil, Mystical Archive foil. Target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Storm. For those of you who don't know, Storm is when you cast a spell, copy it. For each spell cast before it this turn, you may choose new targets for the copy. Excellent right there. So again, if someone's down to 6 life and there was 3 spells cast this turn so far and you play that one, you can kill someone by making them be all the targets, or you can make yourself buffer all off of it. It's just excellent stuff in my opinion. Now, we're going to get down to more of the damage dealing and things that help the damage to be dealt. So, as a blocker and as a 1-drop, I also felt that this was necessary. Again, it's just a favorite card I wanted to add in here for flavor. It's a Monastery Swift Spear. It's a 1/2 haste prowess for 1 red. Now that is just so much value. For those of you who don't know, prowess is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets a +1/+1 until this end of this turn. And there's about 17 instances and sorceries in here, 5 enchantments and 13 artifacts in between mana ramp and the equipment, so this card will definitely get buffered if you have it out 1-drop. I didn't go over the stats here, but I'll make sure to leave it in the description for those of you who want to know right away. It's 64 spells, 29 creatures, 13 artifacts, which include the mana ramp and the equipment. Then we have 5 enchantments and then 17 instances and sorceries. I'm not sure the division between that yet. I forgot to get the devotion. I'll make sure to add that in the description, but yes. And if you guys like the content that you see so far, feel free to like, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and then leave a comment, and I'll enter you as someone who'd like to be a part of this giveaway. Unless if you just say you don't want to be part of the giveaway, I'll just give it to someone else. But all right. Oh, and I also do have a Patreon out, so thank you for those who decided to join my Patreon and support that way. For those of you who would like to be a part of that, it's going to be found in my link tree within the description. Okay, moving forward. So if you noticed earlier, we had different ways to sacrifice creatures that we control. We have more now. And we have ways to control other opponents' creatures now. And the idea is you gain control of another opponent's creature, and then you sacrifice it for your own purpose. So Coercive Recruiter is, or another pirate enters the battlefield under your control. Gain control of target creature until the end of the turn. Untap that creature until the end of the turn. It gains haste and becomes a pirate in addition to its other types. It's a heavy casting cost one. It's for 5 total, 1 red and 4 colorless, but With the mana ramp and the amount of mana that you'll have in here, I don't think it'll be too much of a problem considering you're keeping the board pretty clean. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile it. If that creature was a token, put a +1/+1 counter on Prowling Geistcatcher. I forgot to mention this. Prowling Geistcatcher. It says 3 colorless, 1 black, drop human rogue for 2. It's a 2/4. And then again, whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile it. If that creature was a token, put a +1/+1 counter on Prowling Geistcatcher. When Prowling Geistcatcher leaves the battlefield, return each card exiled with it to the battlefield under your control. So take control of your opponent's creatures, then sacrifice them somehow, and then hopefully this will be out. Delina, Wild Mage. This is more to keep the board clean, using hopefully other creatures on the board that may be more powerful than what you have out currently. Oh no, it's just a creature you control. I was reading that wrong. So you would essentially choose one of your own powerful creatures. This is a 3/2 legendary elf shaman. It's a 3 colorless, 1 red. Whenever it attacks, choose a target creature you control, then roll a d20. If you roll 1 through 14, you create a token. It's tapped and attacking, and it's not legendary, and it says exile this creature at the end of combat. If it's 15 through 20, you just create one of those tokens. So that's pretty awesome. Think of choosing itself, tapped and attacking, and that token's attacking. So you roll. I don't know how that works, but that's got to be broken. Claim the Firstborn. Gain control of target creature with mana 3 or less from until the end of the turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste, and that's a 1-drop red sorcery. So considering that there are plenty of outlets to get rid of the creatures under your control, this will be a very useful handy card that you'll have, especially in your ideal first hand. Another one is Karizav's Expertise. This one is gain control of target creature or vehicle until the end of the turn. Untap it. It gains haste until the end of the turn. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Again, 2 red, 1 colorless, and it's a sorcery. Good old Karizav. Now we have Word of Seizing. This one's a higher casting cost instant. It has split second. It's 2 red and 3 colorless. Untap target permanent. Gain control of it until the end of the turn. It gains haste. Obey. Obey. All right. So, notable cards. We're about halfway through the video, so I want to highlight the notable cards here. We have our commanders, but notable cards here will be the higher casting cost ones that you'll notice. So it'll be Karizav the Merciless. This one definitely makes you a target when it's out, because whenever it's an opponent casts a spell, Karizav the Merciless deals damage equal to that converted spell's mana cost to any target. And this card, along with many others, will match up very well with Toralf, God of Fury. Now, this card is super overpowered in my opinion. It's 2 red and 2 colorless. It's a 5/4 trample that can also be an equipment, but which we will not be using, so I'll leave it on this side. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess damage, or excess non-combat damage, Toralf deals damage equal to the excess to any other than that permanent. So, considering you're going to have plenty of excess damage around, Toralf will keep your board clean. It's gonna keep the battlefield clean. You're gonna love it. Garna, the Blood Flame. It's a 1 red, 1 black, 3 colorless human warrior. Flash, 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, return to your hand all creature cards in the graveyards that were put there from anywhere this turn. Other creatures you control have haste. The other creatures you control have haste. It's just an extra plus, in my opinion. This card, Marionette Master, one of my favorites. I love playing this card in my black decks. This one's 2 black and 4 colorless. Again, higher casting costs one of these notable cards. It's a 1/3 human artificer. Now, it has Fabricate 3. When this creature enters the battlefield, put 3 +1/+1 counters on it, or 3. Create 3 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature tokens. Whenever an artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So imagine equipping this. Now, first of all, for Fabricate 3, I highly recommend doing the +1/+1 counters. Okay, anything that you have to buffer this, even better. Because whenever an artifact you control, which is the rock tokens, so you're shooting a rock token for 2, but with this out, you're draining for 4 at the very minimum with that. For 1, if you decide to go with the servo route. So, Marionette Master, folks. This one of my favorites in here, one of the last higher casting cost creatures that I just approved of is Sagrost, Thief of Heartbeats. It's a 4/4 vampire rogue. It costs 1 less for each creature in your party, which, if you noticed, there were some clerics and some warriors and wizards in there already, and some rogues. And this one, it's a flying, death touch, haste, and other creatures you control have death touch. This allows all your other creatures to take advantage of Toggo's rock tokens and still hitting them for death touch. So, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. So, Sagroth was definitely meant to be in here, not something that I intended to get out. Falconry the Aristocrat. I put in this here just because it was in 4-drop. It's red, black, 2 colorless, vampire, flying haste, 4/1. You can sacrifice a creature with it. That's the reason why I really wanted it, is because it's something that you can keep out on the battlefield, and it has the text, you can sacrifice a creature. So if you do, I mean, it gives it an indestructible, and if it was a human, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So if you get tired of that monastery swift spear, you can take it out on that. All right. Yes. We have more. Okay. Now on to the damage. Destruction. This is the bulk of the deck, where it's pretty much all about destruction here. We have Curse of Shaken Faith. 1 colorless, 1 red. It's an enchantment or a curse, and you enchant a player with it. So whenever an enchanted player casts a spell other than the first spell they cast each turn or copies a spell, this will deal 2 damage to them. Rude. You said no more than 1. Valakut Explorations. 2 colorless, 1 red, an enchantment, landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it's remained exiled. At the beginning of your end step, if there are no cards with Valakut Exploration, put them into their owner's graveyard. Then Valakut Exploration deals damage to each opponent. This works especially well because you do have cards that allow you to get things back from your graveyard, and Valakut Exploration is going to be putting things in your graveyard because you want it to deal that damage. And remember, any excess damage. So Torolf will work with this as well. It's pretty mean. Think of like if you dropped one of the higher casting cost cards into your graveyard using this, and then you dealt that damage. Ebony Owl Netsuki. This is a card from, I believe, Saviors of Kamigawa, but correct me, I can't think off the top right now. I know it's from one of the Kamigawa sets, and it's a 2-drop artifact. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 7 or more cards in hand, Ebony Owl Netsuki deals 4 damage to him or her, just dealing direct damage to him or her. The history of Kamigawa. Owls fill the skies during the Kami War, harbingers of darker times to come. And one of the things that will help us draw cards here is Court of Ambition. Now, this lets us draw cards because when it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. It's for 2 black, 2 colorless. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. If you're the monarch, instead, an opponent loses 6 life unless they discard 2 cards. But you really just wanted to draw a card and while wreaking mayhem. More damage, more destruction. We have Court of Ire. 2 red, 3 colorless. Another enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Again, we're trying to give ourselves reason to draw cards at the end of the turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, Court of Ire deals 2 damage to any target. If you're the monarch, it deals 7 damage to that player or permanent instead. Hold your tongue lest you burn it. Then we have Roiling Vortex. This is probably the meanest card I could think of putting in here as far as just enchantments goes. It's 1 colorless, 1 red. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them. This is why we needed lifelink in the first place, because cards like this, whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. And then you can tap a red, and you can make it so that your opponents can't gain life this turn. So this card is going to be golden for when you're actually dishing all that damage. They won't prevent any of that damage, I'll tell you that much. Alright, now we're on to more damage and destruction. These are creatures and cards that are focused on actually dealing the damage. Yep, these are all creatures here. First I'll show off Quake Bringer. It's a 5/4 giant berserker. It's for 3 colorless and 2 red. Your opponents can't gain life. At the beginning of your upkeep, Quake Bringer deals 2 damage to each opponent. This ability triggers if Quake Bringer is on the battlefield, if Quake Bringer is in your graveyard and you control a giant. So mean. You just want it on the battlefield, and during your upkeep, it's just going to deal 2 damage to each opponent. Look how mad it is. Another card that I recommend in this deck, if you have it in your collection, is Anger, and you want it in your graveyard specifically. It's for 3 colorless and 1 red, and it says as long as this card is in your graveyard, all your creatures have haste, and it's a 2/2. It's just an angry looking thing. Alright, moving forward, we have a Kumano, Master Yamabushi, a legendary creature, a rare from one of the Kamigawa sets. It's a human shaman, and it's 1 colorless, 1 red, and it deals, and you can deal 1 damage. You can just basically ping. It will deal 1 damage to target creature or player. If a creature is dealt damage by Kumano this turn and would be put into the graveyard, remove it from the game instead. So this is just helping clear out that battlefield, really. Dealing that damage. Another maintaining the battlefield card is Emberwild Captain. It's 3 colorless, 1 red, and when it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. It's a 4/2. Whenever your opponent attacks you while you're the monarch, Emberwild Captain will deal damage to that player equal to the number of cards in their hand. Again, punishing people with damage just for having cards in their hand. Like, how dare you? Now we have Prodigal Pyromancer. It's a 2-drop, or it's a 3-drop. It's 2 colorless and 1 red. It's a 1/1 human wizard. It deals 1 damage to. It can tap it to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Yep, you're just pinging people with that one. Then we have the Quombage Witches. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but it's a 1/3 human wizard for 2 black. You can tap it to deal 1 damage to any target, and then 1 damage to any target of an opponent's choice. So you are risking getting your board pinged with this, but they're very, like, the worst they'll do is hit your Prodigal Pyromancer if it's already out. It's 1/1. Or Kedis, for example. Whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. So ruthless. This technically could be one of the partners if you want as a commander, so it does have partner. So you can switch this out with Toggo if you even wanted to have a lizard cat combo. And then we have Orcus, Prince of the Undeath. It's a 5/3 flying trample, and when it enters the battlefield, you can choose one. Each other creature gets a -X/-X until the end of the turn, and then you lose that life. But the one we want is return up to X creature cards with total mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until the end of the turn. Again, there were subtle ways to get certain cards back to your hand or into the battlefield, but this card is just blatant. Worth the mana cost, in my opinion. Carnage Gladiator. Whenever a creature blocks, that creature's controller loses 1 life. This is incentive so that they don't block our commanders coming through. And you can, this is a 4/2 Skeleton Warrior, by the way, for 4. It's 1 red, 1 black, 2 colorless. But yeah, whenever a creature blocks, that creature's controller loses 1 life. And then you can tap 1 and 1 red and 1 colorless, or 1 black, and then 1 colorless, and you can regenerate the Carnage Gladiator. Not my favorite card in here. This was intended to be fodder, really. I just like the fact that it's so ruthless by making each creature's controller lose that much life. So I don't intend for you to block that much in this deck, at least while this is out. So if this is out, it means you have a lot to dish, and you're not worried about taking a little damage. Whoopsie right there. Alright, last pile. One of the piles. As you've been seeing all video, we have a Disintegrate from what looks like 4th edition, revised maybe, I don't know. It's Disintegrate does X damage to any one target. It's a sorcery for 1 red and X. If the target dies this turn, it's removed from the game entirely. So I put it in here because of the classic art. It looked really awesome. We have a classic shock. This shock is a Strixhaven Mystical Archive etched foil. So it's for 1 red and it deals 2 damage to any target. Then we have Eliminate. You know, we're doing more destruction in here. So we have 1 black, 1 colorless, and destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. Then we have a foil Tear from Mirrodin. It's 1 colorless, 1 black, and you can destroy target non-artifact and non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. Excellent instant. But oh my goodness, look how beautiful that is. Voila. I had to put it in here. It's Thanksgiving. I'm feeling very, very giving. I hope you guys are liking the video. Don't forget to go ahead and like and subscribe if you like what you're seeing. I appreciate you all. You're all amazing. What should I call it? What should I call our squad? I mean, I've been thinking of the mana pool. You know, welcome to the mana pool. I say it sometimes. I think I might go with that, but I'm open to ideas. So go ahead and comment an idea. Then we have a Braid. It's a 1 colorless, 1 red. Instant. You can deal 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. Then we have a Mystical Archive Lightning Bolt. Deals 3 damage for that 1 red, so just a little bit better than Shock, right? And then we have our cat and mouse Renn'n'Stimpi wannabes right here. Just highlight you beauties one more time. You guys will work so well with each other. They're partners. She sticks to her chosen master closer than her own shadow. That's awesome. Let's go over some of the lands. We have Command Tower, best land and commander. Rakdos Skillgate. It comes to the battlefield tapped for 1 black or 1 red. Then we have the Rakdos Canarium. When this enters the battlefield tapped, and you have to return a land you control to its owner's hand, but it taps for 1 red and 1 black. We have a Drossforge Bridge, which is it ATB's tapped, and it's indestructible, but you can tap it for a red or black. And then we have a Baron Moor from what I think that's Onslaught. I can't remember. I think that's Onslaught though. But it's just an excellent piece of art, and I want you to have some excellent art. I don't want you to have just, you know, fodder. So this enters battlefield tapped. You can tap it for a swamp, but what's cool is you can cycle this. You can discard it from your hand and draw a card, just in case you don't need it. We have our Field of Ruin. Tap it for a colorless, and then you can tap 2 and then sacrifice Field of Ruin to destroy target non-basic land, just like the dragon we had earlier. And then each player will be able to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield tap. So you're helping everyone that way. And then we have our Terramorphic and Evolving Wilds. Pretty awesome cards in general. Just like Bad Boy MTG says, Joey Moss just thinks these cards are crazy. Loving it, loving the joke. All right, there we go, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know this is essentially a retake, but I did try to format it in a way where you guys can still feel the love and feel the effort. Yeah, so anyways, if you guys like the stuff here, folks, while I was packing up, I realized I almost forgot to mention who our winner is for our last video. So congratulations to Vagrant Owl. I think it's Vagrant Owl or Vagrant AI. I'm not sure which one that is. Feel free to correct me in the comments. But congratulations. Please shout out to Vagrant Owl for just contributing to the channel by commenting and liking and sharing. We appreciate you. So you feel free to email me using the link tree in my About Me, or the email found in my About Me, and I'll get that sent out to you as soon as I can. Yep, congratulations for winning, Salamander Slingers. Okay, now I promise I end my turn. I pass.